The station's corridors reeked of rust and silence. But then he saw her. A child, skin clinging to her bones, scavenging scraps from the wreckage. Her wide alien eyes darted up in fear, until the human held out a single piece of bread. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know if he was friend or foe, but in that moment he became something she hadn't seen in years. Hope, the starving child captain. Marcus Reed walked through the abandoned corridors of New Terra Station Sector 7, his boots echoing against metal floors that hadn't seen proper maintenance in months. The refugee crisis had stretched their resources. Thin and entire sections of the massive space station had been sealed off to contain the overcrowding in the active zones. His patrol route today took him through these forgotten areas, checking for structural damage and ensuring no one had breached the security barriers. The air recyclers hummed weakly here, struggling to process the stale atmosphere. Emergency lighting cast long shadows between broken support beams and scattered debris from the recent Catherian War. Marcus adjusted his utility belt, feeling the weight of his sidearm and medical kit as he continued his methodical sweep of the area. A soft scraping sound made him pause. Years of military training had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about that noise didn't belong in an empty corridor. Marcus drew his scanner and swept the area, but the readings showed nothing unusual. Still, the sound came again, metal against metal, careful and deliberate. Following the noise, Marcus rounded a corner and found himself staring into a storage bay that should have been completely empty. Instead, he saw a small figure hunched over an open supply crate, thin arms moving frantically as they searched through its contents. The figure was clearly not human. The proportions were wrong, and the skin had a distinctive blue-gray tint that Marcus recognized immediately. A Catherian child. Marcus felt his heart clench as he took in the scene. The child was painfully thin, wearing tattered clothes that had once been some kind of uniform. Long silvery hair hung in matted strands around a face that looked far too old for someone so small. The child's movements were desperate but precise, searching through emergency rations with the efficiency of someone who had learned to find sustenance wherever it could be hidden. The child suddenly froze, apparently sensing his presence. Slowly, a pair of large golden eyes turned toward Marcus, and he saw fear flash across the delicate features. The child's hand moved instinctively toward what looked like a piece of twisted metal, a makeshift weapon. Marcus immediately raised, both hands keeping his voice low and calm. "Easy there, little one. I'm not going to hurt you." The child remained motionless for several seconds, studying Marcus with those enormous eyes. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, the child spoke in accented standard. "You are human military. You hunt my people." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had participated in the war effort against the Catherian Empire, but he had never considered what happened to civilians caught in the crossfire. Looking at this starving child, he felt something shift deep inside his chest. "I'm not hunting anyone right now," Marcus said gently. "I'm just doing maintenance checks. What's your name?" The child hesitated before answering. "Zara." "Hello, Zara. I'm Marcus." He slowly reached into his utility belt and pulled out a nutrition bar from his personal supplies. "Are you hungry?" Zara's eyes locked onto the food with desperate intensity, but she didn't move forward. "What do you want for it?" The question broke Marcus's heart. This child had learned to expect payment for every kindness, every scrap of food. "Nothing," he said, setting the bar on the ground between them and stepping back. "It's yours." Zara stared at the nutrition bar for long moments before darting forward and snatching it up. She retreated to her original position but didn't open the package immediately. Instead, she continued to watch Marcus with wary suspicion. "There are more people with you, aren't there?" Marcus asked. "Your family?" "My mother," Zara admitted, quietly. "She is sick. The poison from our world, it came with us. She cannot work anymore, so I find food where I can." Marcus felt anger building in his chest, not at this child, but at the system that had left refugees to fend for themselves in abandoned sectors of the station. "How long have you been hiding here?" 47 cycles, Zara said, finally opening the nutrition bar and taking a small, careful bite. Her eyes widened at the taste. It was probably the first properly prepared food she'd had in weeks. "That's more than 2 months," Marcus said, doing the conversion in his head. "Zara, you and your mother need proper medical care and food." "The refugee processing center." "No!" Zara's voice cracked with panic. "They send us away. Back to Kitharos. But Kitharos is poisoned now. The bombs, they made the air like fire. We cannot go back." Marcus knew she was right. The ceasefire had included provisions for repatriating Kitherian civilians, but their homeworld had been devastated by chemical weapons. Sending refugees back was essentially a death sentence, though the Terran Council seemed content to ignore that fact. "Where is your mother now?" Marcus asked. Zara hesitated again, clearly torn between desperation and caution. Finally, she pointed down the corridor toward a section Marcus knew had been damaged in a recent reactor malfunction. "She cannot move far. The poison makes her weak." Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Take me to her." "Why? Would you help us?" Zara asked, suspicion still evident in her voice. Marcus thought about his duty, his orders, the regulations that governed his every action as a Terran officer. Then he looked at this starving child and realized that some things were more important than following rules. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. Zara studied his face for several more seconds, then nodded. She tucked the remainder of the nutrition bar carefully into her ragged clothing, saving it for later or perhaps to share with her mother. Then she began walking down the corridor, moving with the silent efficiency of someone who had learned to avoid detection. Marcus followed, his mind already racing through the implications of what he was doing. Helping unauthorized refugees was against regulations. If discovered, he could face court-martial and imprisonment. But as he watched Zara's thin figure navigate through the damaged section of the station, he knew he couldn't turn away. The corridor narrowed, and the damage became more apparent as they went deeper into the restricted zone. Radiation scarring marked the walls where plasma conduits had ruptured, and several blast doors hung partially open, their mechanisms damaged beyond repair. This was a dangerous place for anyone to shelter, but Marcus understood why they had chosen it. No patrol would venture this far into the damaged area without specific orders. Finally, Zara stopped beside what looked like a maintenance hatch. She placed her small hand on a concealed panel and whispered something in her native language. The hatch opened with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow crawl space that led into darkness. "She is in there," Zara said, her voice suddenly small and frightened. "Please, human Marcus, if you help her, I will do anything. Work for you, carry things, clean anything." The desperation in her voice made Marcus's throat tight with emotion. "You don't need to do anything, Zara. Let me see her." Marcus activated his portable light and crawled through the hatch after Zara. The space beyond was larger than he had expected, some kind of auxiliary storage area that had been forgotten during the station's construction. Someone had made an effort to make it livable, with salvaged blankets arranged on the floor and a few personal possessions carefully organized against one wall. But Marcus's attention immediately focused on the figure lying motionless on a makeshift bed of folded cloth. The woman was clearly Kitherian, with the same blue-gray skin tone and silver hair as her daughter, but where Zara was thin from hunger, this woman appeared to be wasting away from something far worse. Her breathing was labored, and even in the dim light, Marcus could see the distinctive discoloration around her eyes and mouth that indicated radiation poisoning. "Mama," Zara whispered, kneeling beside the woman. "I brought help." The woman's eyes opened slowly, and Marcus found himself looking into golden orbs that held both intelligence and resignation. When she saw him, she tried to sit up, but the effort left her gasping for breath. "Zara, no," she managed to say. "Too dangerous." Marcus knelt on the other side of the makeshift bed, his medical training taking over as he assessed her condition. The radiation poisoning was advanced, but not necessarily fatal. With proper treatment, she might recover. But she would need medical supplies and care that weren't available in this hidden refuge. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said gently. "I'm going to help you. Both of you." The woman studied his face with eyes that seemed far too old for her apparent age. "Why would a human soldier help Kitherians?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. Because I became a soldier to protect people. All people. I am Lyanna, she said after a moment. This is my daughter Zara. We fled Kitharos when the chemical bombing began. I was a research scientist there. I knew what those weapons would do to our world. You're safe now, Marcus said, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. I'm going to bring medical supplies, food, whatever you need. Lyanna shook her head weakly. Too much risk for you. If your people find out. Let me worry about that, Marcus said. He turned to Zara, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. I need you to stay with your mother. I'll be back tomorrow with supplies. Can you do that? Zara nodded eagerly. Yes, human Marcus. I will wait. As Marcus prepared to leave, Lyanna caught his arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong despite her illness. Why? She asked again. Truth. Marcus looked at both of them, this dying mother and her brave daughter who had risked everything, just to survive. Because no child should have to scavenge for food while their parent lies dying. Because no one should be abandoned when they need help most. And because I believe we're supposed to take care of each other, regardless of what species we are. Lyanna's eyes filled with tears. The first sign of hope Marcus had seen from either of them. Thank you, she whispered, as Marcus made his way back through the damaged corridors toward the active sections of the station. His mind was already working on the logistics of helping them. He would need to be careful, discreet. Medical supplies would have to be acquired without raising suspicions. Food would be easier. He could simply share his own rations and claim he wasn't hungry. But as he reached the boundary between the abandoned and active sectors, Marcus realized that his life had just taken a fundamental turn. He was no longer just a soldier following orders. He was someone who had chosen compassion over regulation, humanity over bureaucracy, and somehow that felt like the most important decision he had ever made. The desperate mother Marcus returned to his quarters that evening with his mind racing. He had spent the remainder of his shift going through the motions of his duties while mentally cataloging what supplies he could safely acquire without raising suspicions. The medical bay would be the biggest challenge. Radiation sickness. Treatments were carefully monitored and accounted for, but he had a plan, risky though it might be. The next morning, Marcus volunteered for additional medical training with Dr. Sarah Chen, the station's chief medical officer. It wasn't unusual for security personnel to update their emergency medical certifications, and Dr. Chen was always happy to have volunteers for her training scenarios. Radiation exposure treatment, Marcus said when she asked what specific area he wanted to focus on. With all the damaged sectors on the station, I figured it might be useful. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. Smart thinking, Captain. We did have 3 cases of minor exposure last month from maintenance crews. Let me show you the treatment protocols. Over the next hour, Marcus absorbed everything Dr. Chen taught him about radiation poisoning, its symptoms, and treatment options. More importantly, he memorized which medications were most effective and which ones might be available in the general medical supplies that security personnel could access for emergency situations. When the training session ended, Dr. Chen handed him a small emergency medical kit. Standard issue for senior personnel working in potentially hazardous areas, she explained. It includes anti-radiation medication, antibiotics, and pain management supplies. Check the expiration dates monthly and let me know if you need replacements. Marcus accepted the kit with what he hoped was casual professionalism, though his heart was pounding. The contents of this single kit might be enough to stabilize Lyanna's condition, at least temporarily. That afternoon, Marcus made his way back to Sector 7 during his off-duty hours. He had filled his pack with his own food rations, additional water purification tablets, and some basic comfort items he thought might help. A thermal blanket from his personal supplies, soap, and even a small entertainment pad loaded with children's educational programs that he thought Zara might enjoy. When he reached the maintenance hatch, he found Zara waiting for him. She looked slightly better than the day before. The nutrition bar had clearly helped, but her golden eyes still held that wariness that spoke of too much hardship for someone so young. Human Marcus, she said quietly. You came back. I said I would, Marcus replied, setting down his pack. How is your mother today? Zara's expression grew troubled. Worse, she had trouble breathing in the night. I was scared she might. She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus felt urgency spike through his chest. Take me to her. They crawled through the hatch into the hidden chamber, and Marcus immediately saw that Zara was right. Leanna's condition had deteriorated. Her breathing was more labored, and the discoloration around her eyes had deepened. But when she saw him, she managed a weak smile. The human soldier returns, she said, her voice hoarse. I was not certain you were real. Zara has a strong imagination. I'm real, Marcus said, kneeling beside her and opening the medical kit. And I'm going to help you feel better. As he began examining her more carefully, Leanna watched him with curious eyes. You have medical training. Basic field medicine, Marcus admitted, checking her pulse and noting the elevated heart rate that indicated her body was struggling. Enough to know that you need anti-radiation medication and fluid replacement therapy. Leanna's eyes widened slightly. You understand what poison affects me? Chemical weapons leave radiation signatures, Marcus said grimly. I've seen it before, though never this severe. He prepared a dose of the anti-radiation medication, hoping it would be compatible with Catherian physiology. This might help slow the progression. As he administered the injection, Leanna studied his face. You have seen war, she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. 3 campaigns on the Outer Rim. Fought against pirates mostly, but I saw what chemical weapons could do to civilian populations. He paused, meeting her gaze. I never thought about the families caught in the crossfire until I met you and Zara. War changes everyone it touches, Leanna said softly. Even those who try to do right. Over the next hour, Marcus worked to make Leanna more comfortable. The medication seemed to help. Her breathing became less labored and some color returned to her pale cheeks. While he worked, Zara sat quietly nearby, watching every movement with intense attention. Tell me about Kitharos, Marcus said as he helped Leanna sip some water. What was it like before the war? Leanna's eyes grew distant, and for a moment the pain seemed to leave her face entirely. Beautiful, she said. We had cities that grew like forests, with buildings that curved and flowed like living things. The sky was purple at sunset, and we had 2 moons that danced around each other every night. Zara leaned closer to her mother. Tell him about the singing crystals, Mama. Ah, yes. Leanna smiled at her daughter. We had crystal formations that would resonate with sound. During festivals, the whole city would sing together, and the crystals would amplify and harmonize our voices. It was said you could hear the music from orbit. Marcus found himself genuinely fascinated. What kind of work did you do there? Biochemical research, Leanna said. I studied how different species could adapt to various atmospheric conditions. Ironically, my research is probably why Zara and I survived the chemical attacks longer than most. You modified your own biology? Marcus asked, impressed despite himself. Leanna nodded weakly. Small changes. Enhanced toxin resistance, improved oxygen efficiency. It bought us time to escape, but it was not enough to prevent this. She gestured to herself with a rueful smile. As they talked, Marcus found himself drawn to this woman's quiet intelligence and dignity. Despite her desperate circumstances, she spoke with the precision of a scientist and the grace of someone who had never lost her fundamental humanity. Or in her case, he supposed, her fundamental Catherian nature. Why? Did you flee instead of seeking medical treatment on your own world? Marcus asked. Leanna's expression darkened. Because the Empire's response to the chemical attacks was to declare martial law and begin forcibly relocating anyone who showed signs of contamination. They called it protective quarantine, but we all knew what it really meant. What did it really mean? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Death camps, Zara said quietly. They were burning the sick ones, Marcus felt sick to his stomach. Your own government? Fear makes people do terrible things, Lyanna said. The contamination was spreading and the leadership panicked. They decided it was better to eliminate the infected than risk the poison spreading further. She looked at Marcus directly. That is why we cannot go to your refugee processing center. If they send us back, they won't, Marcus said firmly. I won't let that happen. Lyanna studied his face. You cannot make such promises, Marcus Reed. You are one soldier. Maybe, Marcus said, but I'm a soldier who's very good at finding ways around regulations when they don't serve justice. As the hours passed, Marcus found himself staying longer than he had planned. Lyanna's condition seemed to stabilize with the medication, and she was able to eat some of the food he had brought. More importantly, she began to talk more freely about her life, her research, and her hopes for Zara's future. She is brilliant, Lyanna said, watching her daughter work through math problems on the entertainment pad Marcus had brought. Her memory is perfect, and she understands complex concepts instinctively. On Kitharos, she would have been accepted into advanced academic programs by now. Marcus watched Zara solve problems that would challenge many adult humans. What about here? Could she adapt to human educational systems? If given the chance, Lyanna said, but refugee children rarely get such opportunities. They are fed and housed if they are lucky, but education is considered a luxury. Marcus made a mental note to research educational programs available to alien refugees. If he was going to help this family, he needed to think about their long-term future, not just their immediate survival. As evening approached, Marcus prepared to leave. The medication had clearly helped Lyanna, and he had left enough supplies to last several days. But as he gathered his things, Zara approached him with a serious expression on her young face. Human Marcus, she said formally, I have been thinking. Oh? About what? Zara glanced at her mother, then back at him. You have been very kind to us. You bring food and medicine and ask nothing in return. This is not normal behavior. Marcus smiled. Maybe not, but it's the right behavior. Yes, Zara said, nodding gravely. This is what I think too. You are a good human. She paused, seeming to gather her courage. My mother is also good. She is smart and kind and beautiful, even when she is sick. Marcus felt a flutter of unease, unsure where this conversation was heading. She is indeed all those things. Zara's next words came out in a rush. I heard you want a wife. My mother is perfect for you. The chamber fell completely silent. Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment while Lyanna looked mortified. Zara, Lyanna said sharply. You cannot say such things. But Zara pressed on, her young face earnest and determined. Mama, he is good to us. He brings medicine when you are sick. He brings food when I am hungry. He does not ask for anything back. She turned to Marcus. And you are lonely. I can see it in your eyes. You need family too. Marcus knelt down to Zara's eye level, feeling the weight of both their gazes on him. Zara, what you're suggesting, it's not that simple. Your mother and I barely know each other, and there are laws, regulations. Laws can be changed, Zara said with the absolute certainty of childhood, and knowing each other can happen with time. She looked between them hopefully. You both need each other. I have decided. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, Marcus found himself touched by the child's innocent logic. In her mind, the solution was simple. The people she cared about should stay together and take care of each other. Lyanna covered her face with her hands. I am so sorry, Marcus. She is young and does not understand. Actually, Marcus said, quietly, I think she understands more than we do. Both Lyanna and Zara looked at him in surprise. Marcus chose his words carefully. Zara, marriage is something that happens when two adults care for each other deeply and want to share their lives together. It's not something that can be decided by someone else, even someone who loves them both. Zara's face fell slightly. Oh. So you do not want to marry Mama? Marcus glanced at Lyanna, who was watching him with unreadable eyes. I think your mother is an extraordinary person, he said honestly. But we need to focus on getting her healthy and keeping both of I. You say first. Everything else, we'll see what happens with time. Zara seemed to accept this answer, though Marcus could see the wheels turning in her young mind. She was clearly not giving up on her plan. As Marcus prepared to leave, Lyanna caught his hand. Thank you, she said softly. Not just for the medicine and food, but for being kind about Zara's suggestion. She's trying to protect you the only way she knows how, Marcus said. By making sure you have someone to take care of you. It's actually quite wise in its way. Lyanna smiled, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. She has always been protective of me. Since her father died, she has felt responsible for my welfare. Marcus felt a pang of sympathy. How did he die? The first wave of chemical attacks, Lyanna said simply. He was at his laboratory when the bombs fell. There was no time to evacuate. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. I'm sorry. Zara barely remembers him, Lyanna continued. But she remembers that he was supposed to take care of me, and now she feels that burden has fallen to her. When she sees someone else being kind to me, she shrugged helplessly. Marcus understood. In Zara's mind, he had stepped into the role her father should have filled. The child was simply trying to make that arrangement official and permanent. I'll be back tomorrow, Marcus promised, with more supplies and hopefully some information about longer-term options for you both. As he crawled back through the maintenance hatch, Marcus's mind was spinning with more than just logistics. Zara's innocent suggestion had forced him to confront feelings he hadn't fully acknowledged. There was something about Lyanna, her quiet strength, her intelligence, her devotion to her daughter, that drew him in ways he hadn't expected. But more than that, he was beginning to realize that helping them had given his life a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For the first time since leaving active combat duty, he felt like he was doing something that truly mattered. As he made his way back to his quarters, Marcus found himself wondering if maybe, just maybe, an 8-year-old Catherian girl might be wiser than all the adults around her. The new beginning. For 3 weeks, Marcus maintained his secret routine of caring for Lyanna and Zara. Each day brought small improvements. Lyanna's strength gradually returned as the anti-radiation treatments took effect, and Zara began to show the normal playfulness of a child who no longer feared starvation. Marcus found himself looking forward to these visits more than anything else in his carefully ordered military life. But secrets, especially ones involving missing medical supplies and altered duty rosters, have a way of revealing themselves. Marcus was in the middle of his morning patrol when his communicator chirped with an urgent message. Captain Reed, report to Commander Harrison's office immediately. The tone made Marcus's blood run cold. Commander Harrison was the station's military governor, and urgent summons to his office usually meant serious trouble. As Marcus made his way through the administrative corridors, he mentally reviewed everything he had done over the past weeks, trying to determine what might have given him away. Commander Harrison was a stern man in his 50s, with gray hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades in military service. When Marcus entered his office, he found Harrison sitting behind his desk with Dr. Chen and Security Chief Martinez flanking him. None of them looked happy. "Sit down, Captain," Harrison said without preamble. Marcus took the offered chair, maintaining his composure despite the growing certainty that his clandestine activities had been discovered. "Dr. Chen has brought some irregularities to my attention," Harrison continued. "It seems that medical supplies have been going missing from the emergency kits, small amounts but consistent over the past 3 weeks." Marcus met the commander's gaze steadily. "I see. She also mentioned that you requested specialized training in radiation poisoning treatment," Harrison added. "Quite a coincidence, wouldn't you say?" Before Marcus could respond, Security Chief Martinez opened a tablet and showed him surveillance footage. The image was grainy, but it clearly showed Marcus entering the restricted areas of Sector 7, during his off-duty hours. "Would you care to explain what you were doing in abandoned sections of the station, Captain?" Martinez asked. Marcus realized that lying would only make things worse. These were experienced officers. They already knew most of the truth, and they were giving him a chance to explain himself honestly. "I was providing medical aid and supplies to refugees who were hiding in the damaged sections," Marcus said simply. The room fell silent. Dr. Chen looked shocked, while Martinez frowned deeply. Commander Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with calculating eyes. "Refugees," Harrison repeated slowly. "What refugees would those be, Captain?" "All refugees are supposed to be processed through official channels. A Catherian woman and her daughter," Marcus said. "They were afraid to register because they believed they would be sent back to their homeworld, which has been rendered uninhabitable by chemical weapons." Commander Harrison's expression grew thunderous. "Captain Reed, are you telling me that you have been harboring enemy aliens without authorization?" "They're not enemies," Marcus said firmly. "They're civilians, fleeing persecution, an environmental disaster. The woman is a scientist who was trying to protect her child." "The war with the Catherian Empire ended less than 6 months ago," Martinez interjected. "These could be spies, saboteurs, or worse." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest. "The woman is dying from radiation poisoning, and the child is 8 years old. They're hardly a military threat." "That's not the point," Harrison said sharply. "You violated direct orders, stole medical supplies, and endangered station security by harboring unauthorized aliens. This is grounds for court-martial, Captain." The weight of his situation crashed down on Marcus. His military career was over, and worse, Lyanna and Zara would likely be discovered and deported to their poisoned homeworld. Everything he had tried to protect would be destroyed. "Sir," Marcus said, choosing his words carefully, "I request permission to speak freely." Harrison studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Granted." Marcus stood up, drawing himself to his full height. "I became a soldier to protect innocent people from harm. Over the past 3 weeks, I have watched a brilliant scientist recover from near-fatal poisoning and seen a starving child learn to laugh again. I have provided aid to people who needed it most, and I have done so at personal cost because it was the right thing to do." He met Harrison's eyes directly. "If following regulations means letting innocent people die, then I'll accept whatever punishment you deem appropriate." The office fell silent again. Dr. Chen was staring at Marcus with something that might have been admiration, while Martinez looked uncomfortable. Commander Harrison's expression was unreadable. Finally, Harrison spoke. "Dr. Chen, how effective were Captain Reed's treatments?" Dr. Chen cleared her throat. "From what I can tell based on the supplies that were taken, quite effective. Anti-radiation protocols were followed correctly, and the dosages suggest someone with proper medical knowledge." "And the security risk?" Harrison asked Martinez. Martinez shifted uncomfortably. "Unknown, sir. We haven't actually assessed the individuals in question." Harrison was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he stood up. "Captain Reed, you will escort myself, Dr. Chen, and a security team to assess these refugees immediately. Depending on what we find, charges may or may not be filed." Marcus felt a spike of fear. "Sir, the woman and child are not threats. Please, don't—" "Captain," Harrison interrupted, "you're in enough trouble already. Don't make it worse by questioning orders." An hour later, Marcus found himself leading a small group through the corridors of Sector 7. His heart pounded as they approached the maintenance hatch where he had spent so many hours over the past weeks. Whatever happened next would determine not only his own fate, but the futures of 2 people he had come to care about deeply. When they reached the concealed entrance, Marcus paused. "Sir, before we go in, I should mention that the child may be frightened by the presence of multiple military personnel." Harrison nodded curtly. "Noted. Proceed." Marcus activated the hatch and called softly into the opening. "Lyanna, Zara, it's Marcus. I'm coming in and I'm bringing some other people with me. Don't be afraid." He crawled through the hatch first, emerging into the hidden chamber that had become so familiar to him. Lyanna was sitting up on her makeshift bed, looking much healthier than she had 3 weeks ago, while Zara stood protectively beside her. Both of them looked frightened as the other officers began emerging from the hatch. Commander Harrison took in the scene with sharp eyes, noting the organized living space, the small pile of books Marcus had brought for Zara, and Lyanna's obvious improvement in health. Dr. Chen immediately went to Lyanna's side, pulling out a medical scanner. "Good afternoon," Harrison said formally. "I am Commander Harrison, military governor of this station. I understand you have been receiving unauthorized aid from Captain Reed." Lyanna straightened despite her obvious fear. "Yes, Commander. He has been very kind to us." "Mama," Zara whispered, pressing closer to her mother's side. Dr. Chen looked up from her scanner with surprise. "Commander, this woman shows clear signs of recovering from severe radiation poisoning. Without treatment, she would have died within days. Captain Reed's intervention almost certainly saved her life." Harrison nodded, then turned his attention to Zara. The child was watching him with those enormous golden eyes, clearly terrified but trying to be brave. "What's your name, child?" Harrison asked, his voice gentler than it had been in his office. "Zara," she whispered. "And how old are you, Zara?" 8 standard years, sir." Harrison's expression softened slightly. He had grandchildren around, Zara's age, and Marcus could see the moment when his military training conflicted with his basic humanity. "Tell me about your homeworld," Harrison said to Lyanna. Over the next hour, Lyanna recounted their story, her work as a research scientist, the chemical attacks that devastated Kitharos, the government's brutal response to the contamination crisis, and their desperate flight to Terran space. She spoke with the precision of an academic and the passion of a mother protecting her child. Dr. Chen continued her examination, documenting Lyanna's condition and treatment history. "Commander," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately." Harrison and Dr. Chen moved to one corner of the chamber, speaking in low voices. Marcus couldn't hear their conversation, but he could see the concern on both their faces. While the adults talked, Zara suddenly broke away from her mother's side and approached Marcus. She tugged on his sleeve until he knelt down to her level. "Human Marcus," she whispered, "are they going to send us away?" Marcus felt his heart break at the fear in her voice. "I don't know, Zara. But whatever happens, I want you to know that knowing you and your mother has been one of the best things that has ever happened to me." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "Does that mean you will marry Mama now?" Despite everything, Marcus found himself smiling. "Zara, what's this about marriage?" Commander Harrison had returned, having overheard Zara's question. Zara looked up at the commander with sudden determination. "Human Marcus should marry my mama," she announced. "He takes good care of us and Mama is very smart and beautiful. They would be happy together." The chamber fell completely silent. Dr. Chen covered her mouth to hide a smile, while Martinez looked like he didn't know whether to laugh or arrest someone. Commander Harrison stared at Zara as if she were some kind of alien creature he had never encountered before. "I see," Harrison said slowly. "And what makes you think they should get married?" "Because they care about each other," Zara said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "And because families should stay together and take care of each other. That is how it is supposed to work." Lyanna looked mortified. "Commander, I apologize for my daughter's inappropriate suggestion." "Actually," Harrison interrupted, raising a hand, "I think your daughter might be onto something." Everyone stared at him in surprise. Harrison turned to Marcus. "Captain, Dr. Chen has informed me that this woman's scientific background could be extremely valuable to our terraforming research program. She has experience in atmospheric modification and biological adaptation that we desperately need." Marcus felt a flutter of hope. "Sir?" "Furthermore," Harrison continued, "Terran law allows for expedited citizenship processing for individuals who provide significant scientific or cultural contributions to our society." He looked at Lyanna. "Dr. Lyanna, would you be interested in working for our research division?" Lyanna's eyes widened. You would allow me to work? To stay?" If you prove to be as valuable as your background suggests, yes. There would be a probationary period, of course, and you would need to undergo extensive security clearance procedures. But assuming everything checks out, you and your daughter could become permanent residents with a path to full citizenship. Zara looked confused. Does that mean we can stay with human Marcus? Harrison looked at Marcus with something that might have been amusement. That, young lady, would depend on whether human Marcus wants to stay with you. All eyes turned to Marcus. He looked at Lyanna, who was watching him with hope and uncertainty in her golden eyes. He looked at Zara, who was practically bouncing with anticipation, and he realized that somewhere over the past 3 weeks these two refugees had become the most important people in his life. Yes, Marcus said simply. Yes, I would very much like that. Zara let out a whoop of joy and threw her arms around Marcus's waist. Lyanna covered her face with her hands, but Marcus could see tears of relief streaming through her fingers. Commander Harrison cleared his throat. Well then, Captain Reed, it seems your unauthorized refugee assistance program has resulted in acquiring a valuable scientific asset for the station. His expression grew stern again. However, your methods were still completely inappropriate and against regulations. Marcus's heart sank. Yes, sir. Therefore, Harrison continued, you will be reassigned to head up our new civilian assistance and integration program. Your first task will be to develop protocols for properly evaluating and assisting refugees who might contribute to our community. He paused. Congratulations on your promotion to Major, Reed. Marcus stared at him in shock. Sir? Someone needs to make sure this kind of thing is handled properly in the future, Harrison said with the faintest hint of a smile. And you seem uniquely qualified for the job. 6 months later, Major Marcus Reed stood in the new Terra Station's civilian quarters, watching Zara work on her homework at the kitchen table of the apartment he now shared with her and Lyanna. Dr. Lyanna Reed, they had married 3 months earlier in a simple ceremony attended by Commander Harrison and most of Marcus's unit, was in her laboratory working on atmospheric processors that would help make damaged worlds habitable again. Marcus, Zara called out, not looking up from her studies. I have finished my mathematics assignments. May I work on my science project now? What's the project about? Marcus asked, coming to look over her shoulder. How to help refugee families find new homes, Zara said seriously. I am going to interview all the families you have helped through your program and write about what made them successful. Marcus smiled, ruffling her silver hair affectionately. That sounds like an excellent project. Zara looked up at him with those enormous golden eyes that had first captured his heart. Marcus, do you think other human soldiers could learn to see refugees the way you do? Marcus considered the question carefully. Over the past months, his refugee assistance program had helped dozens of displaced families find new lives on New Terra Station and other Terran colonies. Not all of them had been as fortunate as Lyanna and Zara, but each success story had proven that cooperation and compassion could overcome the barriers of species and politics. I think people can learn anything if they're taught the right way, Marcus said finally. And I think you might be the perfect person to teach them. Zara grinned, the expression lighting up her entire face. Good. Because I have decided that when I grow up I will work with you to help refugee families. It will be my job. As Marcus looked at this remarkable child who had changed his life simply by asking for help, he realized that maybe the greatest human strength wasn't superior technology or military might. Maybe it was the ability to recognize that taking care of each other, regardless of species, origin, or circumstance, was what made them truly strong. And maybe, just maybe, it had taken an 8-year-old alien girl to remind him of that fundamental truth. When Lyanna came home from her laboratory that evening, she found Marcus and Zara working together on her school project, their heads bent over a tablet as they reviewed interview notes from refugee families. She paused in the doorway, watching the two most important people in her life collaborate with easy affection, and felt her heart swell with gratitude. How was your day? Marcus asked, looking up as she entered. Productive, Lyanna said, settling into a chair beside them. We made a breakthrough in atmospheric regeneration techniques. It looks like we might be able to reverse the damage on Kitharos within a generation. Zara's head snapped up. Really, Mama? Our old world could be beautiful again? Yes, little star, Lyanna said, using the pet name from Zara's early childhood. Though I think our new world is pretty beautiful too. As they sat together around their kitchen table, working on Zara's project and planning for tomorrow's challenges, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since that first day when he encountered a starving child in an abandoned corridor. He had set out to save 2 refugees and discovered that they had saved him instead. They had shown him that the best of humanity wasn't found in defeating enemies or following orders, but in extending compassion to those who needed it most. And sometimes that compassion came back to you in ways you never expected, in the form of a brilliant scientist who became your partner in life, and a remarkable child who taught you that the simplest solutions were often the wisest ones. After all, as Zara had said from the very beginning, families should stay together and take care of each other. That was how it was supposed to work.